Daily Score North style. Zolgad and Declan Goff here, and we are reacting to the news that just came out in the last, Dex, 5 minutes or so, that Danielle Hunter, who, remember when it was just a little tweak, according to Coach Zimmer, it's just a little tweak, it's not, don't worry about it, fake news, all of you back off. The team announcing this afternoon that Danielle Hunter has been placed on the IR. Now, it's not like the old days, so he's not out necessarily, although I'm going to caution you, don't get excited about this too much. He is out for, according to Courtney Cronin of ESPN, a minimum now of the first 3 weeks, so he could return in week 4 in Houston. The Vikings, so here's what's weird. By putting Hunter on the IR, Declan Goff, the way that they did after practice today, they are not required now. They have avoided the injury report. They're not required to tell us what is wrong. Courtney, citing a source, said it looks like a neck injury that Hunter suffered in an August 14th practice. He had not practiced since then. Long story short, the Vikings have done their best to avoid telling the truth about this. This is now a major concern. Danielle Hunter out for at least the first month of the season, probably, if not beyond that. It's a neck problem, which, by the way, in football, do not discount that. That is, I would far prefer to tweak an ankle than tweak a neck. And what appeared to be 2+ weeks ago, the Unique Ngakoue trade, which was, oh my gosh, Everson Griffin, Declan, has been replaced by a right end who they could pair with Danielle Hunter on the left end. And ain't this going to be grand? Now it has to be backed up a little bit and thought of in this way. The Vikings were very concerned and clearly are concerned about Danielle Hunter's status, I would say, for the season, because you can't fool with necks. If something is wrong with your neck, you do not come back until it is fully healed. And therefore, I'd frame it this way. The Ngakoue trade now has to be thought of as not the replacement for Griffin, but the replacement for a pass rusher, period, including your left end, Danielle Hunter. But this is why you never trust a coach or a team that tells you it's a minor tweak. 4 days before the opener against Green Bay, this is anything but minor news for the Minnesota Vikings.
This is, I wouldn't say this is catastrophic news. I don't know if I'll go that far. It's not Kirk Cousins getting injured and you have no backup plan. You have Unique Ngakoue, who you thought was going to be a double dragon duo, for the lack of a better word, with Danielle Hunter on that defensive line. And now the fact that Danielle Hunter is out, that's your best defensive player. I know you can make a case that there's a lot of good defensive players in this team in Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith and Eric Kendricks, Judd. But if what the Vikings' bread and butter is going to be this season, and I'm bullish on Mike Zimmer. I know he can cook up something even with rookie cornerbacks, but we all looked at it and said, okay, we'll accept that there's going to be some lapses in the defensive backspeak, but we will also know that this team can get after the quarterbacks. You have Danielle Hunter and now Unique Ngakoue. Like, what? This is going to be amazing. And you plug in guys like Shamar Stephen and Ifeanyi Adedebo that you can plug and play, and you can stuff the run, and this is going to be great. So we'll sacrifice this. Well, now with Danielle Hunter out and Unique Ngakoue being basically the only legitimate threat on that line, that just opens up a whole can of worms for this defense, Judd, that I'm now startled by. I don't know if he's out for 3 weeks. We did a schedule release show on Purple Daily earlier this afternoon.
Blow that show up.
Seriously, throw it out, I guess. Or at least we'll have to, I probably have to change some of my picks because I had the Vikings starting 3-0. And at this point, this is going to be a tall task for the Vikings to try to replace Danielle Hunter. And a neck injury, like a neck injury is pretty significant. And you can kind of, you can do your best to try to hide that. Like I'm not surprised he's able to go out to stretch, and he probably was able, to hide it a little bit, because of like if you have a leg injury, Judd, and you have a limp, well, it's pretty obvious you have a limp. If you can't lift your arm and your arm's in a sling, pretty obvious you got an arm injury. You can probably, I wouldn't say BS, but you can fool some people with a neck injury if you're just doing some light stretching and doing all this and that. Mm-hmm. So take away if this is even a contract issue, which I'm sure we'll get into here in a little bit. If it's just a physical injury, a neck injury, that is significant and bad news for the Vikings.
And you can't brace this up. You can't, if it's a knee and it's not a torn ACL, you can put a brace on there and you're not going to be as effective, but you can try and play. With a neck, Declan, you do not fool around with it. You do not try and rush a player back. This is I can't be effusive enough in telling you the enormity potentially of this. And we now need to not be saying, well, he'll be back for week 4. We now don't know. The Vikings don't know. We don't know. This was hidden because the Vikings clearly thought that there'd be no incentive to tell us. But if you've ever wanted to panic about a star player, go ahead now, because this is a panic deal. And your point is a great one. Defensive line. Okay. Ngakoue, what a trade. Hunter, the middle of the line, a little bit sketchy, but those defensive ends, man, that's going to be pretty damn good, right? Well, now it looks like if the depth chart holds up, Ngakoue will start at right end on Sunday, or he should against the Packers, right? You'll have then, in fact, let me call up the depth chart. You will then have inside Shamar Stephen and Jalil Johnson. I don't know about that one. And by the way, those guys you can run against. That's problem one. And then if the depth chart holds true to form, your left end is Jalen Holmes as your starter. Okay? Raise your hand if you had the, boy, I'd like to see Jalen Holmes play more pool, because I sure didn't. So, yeah, this now resets to me the expectations, the schedule. And the question now becomes, when is Danielle Hunter back? And again, don't assume a thing here. So, yeah, this news is startling. I'll say this as well, too. The Vikings put out a tweet recently now, as we record this at 3:40 p.m. on Wednesday, that Danielle Hunter had been placed on IR decks. They didn't say it was a neck problem. Courtney reported that. So that's very rare. Like always, if you IR a guy, when's the last time that you've seen a guy IR'd in a press release or a tweet sent out by said team that doesn't say what's wrong? So I don't know what that says, but there's nothing about this situation right now that doesn't seem panicked to a certain degree. And I do think that there was some fear on the Sunday that they made the Ngakoue trade, and they're probably right, that they couldn't go into the season with Jalen Holmes at left end decks and Offetti at right end. And I think they probably said, well, the fans are going to think that we got a right end to go with our Pro Bowl left end, who's had back-to-back, by the way, 14 and a half sack seasons. I think the reality was the Vikings said privately, we got to have somebody. And this defensive line now, to me, very much goes back to being suspect.
Yeah, it's bad news, man. And I'm trying to figure out some type of optimism here where you can think of, okay, if it's just 3 weeks, then maybe you can be okay here. But with the Vikings essentially hiding the information, this is just weird. This is just very strange. And Mike Zimmer's always been coy. This is classic par for the course with Zimmer when he says just a little tweak, or he has his comments of, I guess we'll see. That's just classic Zimmer, Bill Parcellsian. That's just who he is. But I think this is going to be a significant loss to the Vikings season. I mean, Danielle Hunter has been one of the most underappreciated and yet one of the most productive players in the NFL since he's debuted. And the fact he's now not on your defensive line, Yannick Ngakoue wasn't just brought in here to be a tag team and have an elite defensive line just like the Green Bay Packers have had or the Chicago Bears have had in this NFC North division. You take out that biggest cog from the house, and now I have significant questions. And I'm hoping it's just 3 weeks, Judd, but now I'm not holding my breath at all. I think you just have to accept the fact that until someone says something on this, that Danielle Hunter is going to be inactive for not indefinitely, but I have no timetable when I can suspect he's going to come back, even with us being in the brand of reckless speculation and trying to figure out when he's going to come back. This is a tough pill to swallow if you're a Vikings fan.
With a neck problem off the top of my head, because I don't think there is in football a minor neck problem. Like I don't think we can be like, well, he probably just has a disc problem. Oh, it's no big deal, right? Like if you have a stiff neck, they can fix that. But if you're going to miss time and be placed on an IR of any sort, that means that something is really wrong. So I would say brace yourself for at least 8 weeks, because again, you're not going to rush this. There's no way on God's green earth that the Vikings are going to be, or Hunter or his camp are going to be irresponsible enough to be like, it's just a neck. I'll go back to, if it's a foot, if it's a knee, it can slow them down, or a shoulder, it can slow you down. But you know what you do with a knee or a shoulder? You put a harness or a brace on that sucker and you go play, and it hurts like hell. And you're probably not as good as you should be, but you're still playing. I would brace myself now with how secretive this has been kept by the Vikings. I would brace myself for at least 8 games. Okay, the second part of this that I want to get into with you, Declan Goff, on this emergency episode of Purple Daily with Danielle Hunter being placed on IR is if this could be related to his contract at all. Now, I say that because for as good as this kid is, and he's turned himself into a great player, credit to him and the team. But he has signed his, get this, his base salary, okay, for 2020 is 3.4 million because he redid his contract. Okay. 21, it goes up to 12.2. 22, at the age of 27, it goes down to 11.4. And 2023, it's the exact same. Those are all very nice paydays, but those are not the paydays of an elite end. And in fact, among 4-3 pass rushing ends, when this whole thing with him missing substantial time started, I looked it up. I think it was on overthecap.com, keeps track of this. And I want to say that Danielle Hunter, and granted, he's not a right end, he does play left end. I want to say, Dex, that he was 18th in the league of pass rushing ends. He should be top 5. So I would say it's a neck problem. It's probably a big deal just alone by itself. But if you are the Hunter people, there ain't no way, there is no good excuse for you to take any chances here. There's no pay. Like, if you are done or something's wrong here, or you come back and then you're done, you got a bad contract to start with. So I don't think the contract is driving this problem. I do think it's probably going to make, if Hunter is smart, which I think he is, it's going to make him say, I'm going to come back in week 4. That might be a mistake. Come back in week 5. That might be a mistake too. It's going to give him, rightfully so, I'm defending the player here, not the team. It's going to give him more incentive to take as long as possible, and he should.
I would say if you're asking me to put a two-person pie chart or two-way pie chart of how much is this injury, how much is this contract, I would say it's probably 60-40 in favor of the injury and 40% of the contract right now. I think it's obviously a significant injury. It's a neck injury. We touched on that in the first 10 minutes. That's not something you mess with, especially as a big guy like Danielle Hunter. But I'm not going to rule out that the contract that he signed, which was we all criticized, we all I don't say criticized it, we all questioned the decision for him to sign that contract, 2 years ago, when, yes, he was used not as a full-time player, but we all could see, we were watching a superstar, an Aaron Donald, a Khalil Mack, a top 5 NFL defensive end blossom before our eyes. And even like on a trajectory that he's on right now, Judd, he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and he's only been in the league for 4 years, So this was a guy who signed a very team-friendly deal to start with. And now with the neck injury and him kind of realizing he's look at all the guys that are getting paid right now in the NFL. For God's sakes, Jalen Ramsey into a different position gets $155 million. Unique Ngakoue is looking for a big new deal. Dalvin Cook's looking for a new deal. Kirk Cousins gets an extension. If I'm Danielle Hunter, I'm looking around and I do know, even though he's a very humble person from when I've talked to him, he's probably looking around saying, like, where's mine? Where's my cut here? I mean, I'm one of the most important pieces, if not the most important piece to this team. And yes, did I sign the contract? Yes, you did. You should honor that contract. I understand. But also I can see why he's looking back on it now thinking like, man, that was a huge mistake. And with as good as a player I am and how much I make of an impact on the field every day, I deserve mine. So I can totally see why this injury and the contract basically go hand in hand.
So I'd say it's 80% injury, 20% contract. But to what we're talking about here, I don't think this is driven by the contract, but I think the results, rightfully so, of when he comes back will be, because you're not going to take a chance here. And the other thing is, again, with a neck, that's your career. So this is not, I came back and I tweaked it, and now I'm out for 3 more weeks. This is no, I came back and I tweaked it, and now I might be done for a long, long time, because doctors don't mess with this. Football clearly is not conducive to neck problems, which involves your spine. So I don't think this is being driven by his contract. I do think that the contract is going to come into play in a big way of him saying, if I'm going to get back to being Danielle Hunter and get another payday here, I need to be back at 100%. And so, again, I would just caution you. I'm guessing it's 8 weeks, 8 games. And I have seen in covering, and so have you, this sport, where these things just extend and extend. And before you know it, you're at week 12, week 13. I mean, Sidney Rice, Sidney Rice, a wide receiver with what, a hip, right?
Yeah.
Had the surgery done, and we don't know what's going to happen here, too. We don't know if there's a procedure or something. But Rice had, he came back for training camp in 2010, had hurt the hip against the Saints in the 2009 NFC title game. And do you remember how often we kept being like, well, he's coming back soon, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, it'll be next week, and then it's going to be the next week. And that was also the same thing, contract driven. Sidney Rice had told the Vikings, give me my payday. In fact, he told them after the Saints game, you pay me now, I'll go get the surgery I need. And they're like, no, we're not going to. And he said, that's fine, then I'm not going to get it. Well, he got it right before that year. The point was, again, it was driven by the contract. And we can criticize these players all we want, but you need to look no further, Dex, than Dalvin Cook, who's being a good sport, a good soldier, coming to camp. He's going to play a key role in this offense. And you know what, Declan? If he gets hurt, he's absolutely screwed. So we can criticize players all we want for lack of loyalty or being money hungry. But in this sport, especially for guys who are stars, there's X amount of time to earn your dollars. So to discount the contract for Danielle would be a huge mistake. But this is, if you're a Vikings fan, I'm sorry, man. This is just bad news. There's no good way to paint this. 3 or 4 days before you start the season against the Packers. And by the way, the Packers, who are in disarray at right tackle, and so it looked like you were going to have Danielle Hunter, your left end, lined up against probably a backup right tackle and a gateway, just an open trap door to Aaron Rodgers is now gone.
I mean,
I don't know what else to tell you. It's just not good.
I'm at the point where I don't like to be the typical, typical Vikings. This is classic Vikings, because I think it's just a cliche and a cop-out. But, man, this is something that just seems to always happen to this franchise. Right when you're getting optimistic, right? I predict this team to go 11-5. They were going to start 3-0, probably win the division. And if you don't have Danielle Hunter for 8 games, maybe even 3 or 4 games, Judd, that is the difference of you not winning the division.
Well, Sunday, right? The Packers game. Impacted right there. You're impacted.
I don't even know if I can pick the Vikings now to beat the Packers if they don't have Danielle Hunter. I don't know.
Sorry about that. Bad news. I'm sure that Phil will have plenty to say about this on Mackie and Judd, along with Purple Daily on Thursday. Who knows? We might go back and redo the schedule now. I mean, my thoughts have changed completely, I guess. But appreciate you tuning in for an emergency episode. Danielle Hunter to the IR for the Vikings. He's Declan. I'm Judd. We'll talk to you soon.